From the reduction of Khaybar to his final dissolution, a period of about 3 years, frequently feeling, as he thought, from the occasional twitches and pains in his bowels, that he was not so invulnerable as he and his followers pretended. When some of his followers, I guess, had ideas, but he became, if possible, more than before, well, he could stand upon his legs, confessing that to be the sole cause of his death in the extremity of his torture, which, at first, he wished the world to believe had done him no injury. Well, he didn't realize it. He figured, well, my companion was poisoned, but I seem to be fine, and some mushrooms and other stuff are like that. Before his departure, he's nominated Abu Bakr his successor, to whose particular care and protection he recommended his beloved wife, Aisha. He gave up the ghost in the 63rd year of his age, according to the Arabian computation, R, and the 61st, according to ours. His death was matter of astonishment to many of his adherents, who considered it as incompatible with the nature and design of his mission. They concluded, therefore, that he was only asleep and would assuredly return in the space of a few days. Finding him not at all disposed to return, they gave him 1,000 years to finish his journey, which brought it down to 1632. As there was still no appearance of the goodly prophets coming back, they gave him 1,000 years more. Again, no, they're putting a Christian sort of theme on that. Maybe a Shabbatized V, Abu Bakr put a period to the controversy respecting his exit by proving out of the Quran that the Prophet of God behooved to die. They were also divided in his opinion as to the manner and place of his interment, whether his remains should be conducted to Mecca and there deposited with his ancestors in the place of his nativity. This was likewise managed by the influence and address of his uncle, who commanded a grave be dug in the place where Aisha's bed stood. Here was Muhammad buried, and over his grave a mosque or a place of worship was afterwards erected. Well, Islam forbids such a practice. There was a dome put up, but the masjid was there and kind of built around it. And but yeah, Islam doesn't even allow, bigger than that with a gravestone. The masjid was, extended, So all the narrations about praying in that masjid, people think, well, it's only in the original spot of the masjid that has certain honors, and I don't think you can necessarily interpret it that way. It is not true that the Arabs were required to pay divine honors to him in the grave, for the pilgrims of his followers were directed to be made to Mecca, whereas his tomb is at Medina, 270 miles from it. We must also reject those ridiculous accounts which have been circulated, probably by Christians, of his being suspended between heaven and earth in an iron coffin by the power of magnets, since the Muslimin themselves never attempt to prove any such thing. Thus have we endeavored to draw the character of Muhammad and the various methods adopted by him to establish his path in the world, from the period at which he assumed the title of Prophet of God to the time of his decease. Lust and ambition were the two powerful motives by which he was actuated, and he reckoned no sacrifices too expensive to accomplish his aim. And he basically lived in greater poverty after the prophet thing, so and he was willing to give up more of his wealth to help people at that point. We have seen the various arts by which he insinuated himself into the good opinion of many, making them converts to his cause, and how respectable he became in their estimation, and by people who didn't believe in him. That's why he became leader of Medinat at-Nabi, formerly known as Yathrib, by help of his wit, presence of mind, and consummate address, before he had recourse to his last expedient of giving mankind his religion at the point of a sword. No, he defended the life of people at the end of the sword, but there's no evidence that he ever allowed for forced conversions. He preached against forced conversions of all sorts. For 10 years, his life exhibited nothing but raids, plunder, and bloodshed. Well, it was mostly trade and farming and stuff. That's what the community basically took in part in Medina, but in which Considering the number of his forces and the extent of the theater upon he acted, he extended in atrocity even Alexander the Great. The fact that he never allowed civilians to be fought, that he only had the raids done against the property of those who had driven out and stolen the homes and property of the community, it just doesn't make sense to conclude to treat it that way. To undertake such a task as that of the Arabian required a mind an almost utter stranger to fear. In addition to these qualities, of which we had already found him to possess, a palpable discovery of his perfidious designs would be the forerunner of an ignominious death, and even to be vanquished before the completion of his wishes, no less hazardous. Yet, in spite of every discouragement which deliberation must have suggested, without a rational argument or the shadow of a miracle to support his claim, well, again, a lot of them, this guy's very specifically dodging that sort of thing, he subjected a larger portion of the globe than the heavenly and philanthropic religion of the Lord Jesus Christ has yet enlarged. Now, the Bible kind of makes it sound like Christianity is a Paul. Jesus was of a different religion and more than just theology. This is a phenomenon in the history of moral revolutions, which will beggar the whole world to produce such another. It is not, however, so astonishing that his path should have gained a footing in the 7th century among ignorant barbarians, to whose lust it promised to administer everlasting fuel. Well, it limited what they could do to women, animals, children, thought, whatever. It's, that's why it faced so much opposition among them. And as has been the progressive improvements of reason have not long since been its grave, the free exercise of reason will be, well, its continued spread at last, and that's what we're seeing. But while it continues to be crammed down the throats of mankind, well, people speaking stuff, people responding to stuff that's being spoken, but again, Islam does not allow the forcing of religion. It will not, on a sudden, give its dying groan. It is the religion of India, Persia, Turkey and Asia, Turkey and Europe, Arabia, Little Tartary, and Little Bukharia, and various other countries. India is 2,322 miles long and 2,100 broad. Persia, 1,225 long, 900 broad. Turkey and Asia, 1,200 long, 900 broad. Turkey and Europe, 540 broad. Arabia, 1,330, 1,260 broad. Little Tartary, 450, 155 broad. Little Bukharia, 1,560, 570 broad.